Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I want to introduce you tonight to Neil Fraser. He is involved in Medtronic, head of Medtronic in Canada. He's been involved in the biotechnology space for a long period of time. And Medtronic has recently developed a new pacemaker, and they've also been involved in a bunch of things in regards to the response to COVID-19. So I think we're going to cover both topics today. Mr. Fraser, how are you? Welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
So you are president of the Canadian operation of Medtronic, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I've been with Medtronic for over 30 years. And so I've seen a lot of things in the medical technology space. And certainly our company is the largest player in the world in medical technology. And we really do span the globe. But we're also the largest employer in our industry in Canada.
Headquartered in Mississauga?
Yes. In Brampton, just across the border.
No, just across the border. How terrible. Well, in Peel region, that's fantastic, in Western Toronto.
Yes.
And you're the largest employer in the medical device business in Canada.
That's correct, yeah.
Fantastic. Now tell me about this new pacemaker, sir.
Yeah, well, we have, over the years, pacemakers have been getting smaller as the electronics got more sophisticated and our battery technology as well. But very recently, we've introduced a whole new micro technology that, first of all, it doesn't require a lead to connect the pacemaker to the heart. And secondly, it's so small, like it's the size of a large vitamin pill. And it's implanted directly into the heart. Historically, pacemakers were implanted in the chest, and then the wire via the venous system communicated with the interior wall of the heart.
That's incredible. I always got the impression pacemakers were like the size of a cell phone.
Well, they were once much larger, but just with the advancement in printed circuit technology, as well as the understanding of the needs of the heart, we've been able to really shrink the size.
Now, is rejection of a pacemaker an issue? Is that one of the benefits of the size, or is it surgical? Or please tell me.
Yeah, no, it's very rare that there's a rejection of a pacemaker. But it's really more of a procedural thing that creating a pocket in the patient's chest to put a pacemaker in, and then threading a wire through the venous system into the right side of the heart. Has been a time-consuming procedure, and patients also would prefer not to have a wire in their chest.
And so this new one is the size of a vitamin pill.
Yes, that's correct. And
it's inserted directly into the heart.
Yes, that's.
How do you do that? Is it like open heart surgery? How do you get it in there?
There are many procedures now that involve making an incision in the leg and then threading up into the heart. And then, the device is implanted and anchored in place and working. And then, the catheter that delivers it is removed. And so it's right there where it needs to be in the heart.
Incision in the leg and then threaded up.
Yes.
To get to the heart.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's incredible.
And there are other procedures that do this as well, such as coronary stents. And the transcutaneous valves now that can be threaded in so that you don't require open heart surgery.
We're chatting tonight with Neil Fraser. He's the president and CEO of Medtronic in Canada. We're talking about a new pacemaker that Medtronic has developed. It's fascinating. It's the size of a vitamin pill implanted directly into the heart. We're going to take a break and come back more after messages with Mr. Fraser. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight about pacemakers and the development of pacemakers with Neil Fraser. He's the president and CEO of Medtronic here in Canada. Interesting enough, Medtronic is headquartered here in Peel Region and is the largest employer in the medical device sector in Canada, which is kind of interesting, and we may come back to that. But Neil, I understand that this is a less invasive procedure than other types of implantations of pacemakers. Is that important during COVID-19 or any time?
Yeah, I think that the COVID pandemic, people are, first of all, not keen on going to the hospital in the first place, and secondly, not keen on staying overnight and occupying a hospital bed. So minimally invasive procedures can be done as a day surgery. So the patient's in and out the same day. And so it doesn't affect so much the bed occupancy of the hospital. And there are many procedures now that are possible in cardiology using catheters, where many of these procedures used to involve open heart surgery. So not only do patients prefer it, but actually hospital administrators prefer minimally invasive for the reason I outlined.
You know, it's interesting. There's been a lot of different things during COVID-19 that we've been forced to sort of adapt to. And a lot of people have said these are things that would have happened anyway, and we've learned it. Do you think this is something that's a trend that's going to continue, or is this something that's only going to be attractive during COVID-19?
No, I think that there are a number of things that have happened during COVID that people have discovered, the benefits of remotely monitoring patients, for example. Our pacemakers and wearable insulin pumps, physicians can access the information from these devices remotely and make adjustments if necessary. And, they can look at logs of irregular incidents that have occurred with the patient and make corrections, perhaps to their medication if required. So I think virtual care has really shown its benefits at a time when people didn't want to be in hospitals and administrators didn't want to bring people into hospitals. So that's a key thing. And of course, minimally invasive surgery, which is a way of doing surgery through a minimal incision, which reduces risk of infection and allows the surgery to be done within a day and not require overnight stay, typically for recovery. And a good example of that is the use of what's called TAVR, which is a trans aortic valve implant. You can thread a heart valve in through the groin and up into the heart and implant it and remove the catheter, and the valve is in place and the patient can go home. So again, these kinds of technologies benefit patients and they benefit the healthcare system. They are a little bit more expensive than the conventional product that's surgically implanted, but from a cost effectiveness, the cost of a hospital day in critical care, it's cost effective over the cycle of care, which is the key benefit.
That's fascinating. Maybe Neil, we could take a step back. Who is it that needs a pacemaker? What type of problem is it that someone requires a pacemaker? Yeah,
there's a whole family of diseases that can relate to the rhythm of the heart. The most common thing is that the patient may have fainting spells, because their heart is not meeting the demand that the patient has for exercise or just what we would call a physiologic demand. So the pacemaker speeds the heart up so that it beats faster, so that the blood gets to the brain and the body, and activity can continue. And so that's the most common thing is the heart rate slows down. But there are other kinds of syndromes where one ventricle may beat out of synchrony with another ventricle, and that may affect, the blood pressure and the circulation. So part of it is getting the heart to act in synchrony. And so this device that we were talking about earlier, the Micra AV, it not only, it's implanted in the ventricle, but it can also sense when there's a contraction in the atrium and make the atrium and ventricle work in synchrony. So that would be another kind of problem that's known as heart block or partial heart block when the atrium and the ventricle aren't working together. There are very highly specialized cardiologists called electrophysiologists that specialize in sort of the detection and treatment of these kinds of heart rhythm anomalies. And that's where the pacemaker fits in.
So if I'm a candidate for a pacemaker, do I get to choose the Medtronic version, or the cardiologist just decides and plugs whatever he wants into me or she wants into me?
Yeah, in most cases, the cardiologist is the person who will decide what's the most effective and efficient treatment for the patient. And so that means cost effective, but it also means the best outcome for the patient. Typically, the patients aren't as involved in those choices because it can be very technical. But, I would say that there's usually a conversation with the patient that gets them familiar with the decision being made.
Well, if I had a choice, I'd want this smaller version that looks like the size of a vitamin pill than something much larger. My cousin has had a pacemaker, I think for like 20 years or so, and goes back to, I think it is check the battery or something like that on a very regular basis. How long do these things last?
Yeah, typically it's more in the 10-year range, but it also depends on how much that you actually use it, because the pacemaker detects the heart's natural rhythm. So if you don't need the pacemaker to intervene, then it doesn't get used. And so your condition, there's a range of patients. There's patients that are called pacemaker dependent, where 100% of their heart rhythm is dependent on the pacemaker. On the other hand, there's patients who have only very intermittent needs for the pacemaker. So the longevity will vary, with the use of power by the pacemaker.
And would pacemakers be covered by our socialized healthcare system? Are they covered by OHIP?
They absolutely are covered. It's not OHIP. The doctor's fees are covered by OHIP, but it's really in the hospital budget. They have a regular budget for pacemakers and other products for heart rhythm disturbances. And that's, every year, the Ontario government Ministry of Health would be allocating budgets for this purpose.
As I think you may remember, I used to be in the pharmaceutical business. And one of the things that, lots of the scientists would tell me is that pharmaceutical sales as a percentage of the healthcare spending dollar had gone from like 15% a couple of decades ago to almost 50% of the healthcare spending as pharmaceuticals became a lot more prevalent. I'm just wondering, what's the story with medical devices? Are medical devices taking more and more of the sort of the healthcare spending dollars because they're actually hopefully providing significant benefit?
They are growing within the healthcare budget, but the percentage is much lower. The base has been about 3% in Canada, and it may go as high as maybe 5%, which we see in some other markets. But it's much lower because it's very highly specialized, and it applies to patients with often severe illness.
We've all become, I think, a lot more educated on approval processes as Tony Fauci and people have told us about different approvals of vaccines and of monoclonal antibodies and things like that. What's the approval process a medical device has to go through?
Well, First, we are required to establish safety and efficacy of the device, which could require a clinical trial. We supply extensive documentation to Health Canada to receive that approval. As I said, there may or may not be a clinical requirement, a clinical trial requirement. And typically it takes 7 or 8 months for a new medical device to be reviewed and approved by Health Canada.
And when you're talking about clinical trials, are they like these vaccine trials or pharmaceutical trials where you got to have like 500 to a couple tens of thousands of people make use of the product?
No, it's typically a smaller number than that, but they're looking, because each new device is carrying technology forward that had been proven before and maybe involve a small change in the electronic algorithm. So that very specific feature is assessed for its effectiveness. On the other hand, if it's a completely new device, it could require more extensive testing and clinical exposure. But it's quite different. As you could imagine, it's harder to randomize when it's a clinical procedure, because somebody knows if they've had a procedure or not.
Yeah, I always wondered how you could randomize, medical devices and a lot of other products. Let me step back and ask you, if I could, about your industry and how it's been impacted by COVID-19. There's been a lot of controversy in regards to in Canada. We may have had a strategy to go for cheapest goods, and so therefore we're reliant on other countries to produce vaccines for us, PPE for us, respirators and ventilators for us. I've even had people that produce masks say that after SARS they had contracts to produce masks to have in our emergency supply. Those contracts were terminated, and because of that they had to scale up to produce PPE. Do we have a vibrant medical device manufacturing and research industry in Canada, or should the government be doing additional things to ensure that we've got local domestic research and manufacturing capabilities?
We do have a vibrant industry in Canada, but some of these larger scale products are manufactured on a global scale. I can speak specifically to ventilators. We're one of the top manufacturers of ventilators. We have one plant for the world, and that plant actually is in Ireland. And the supply chain can involve as many as 1,500 different parts to assemble a ventilator. And they're sourced literally from all over the world. Now, within Canada, when the pandemic hit, the demand from ventilators went up by multiples, and we were not able to keep up with the demand, globally or here in Canada. Over a period of time, we were able to increase our production 5-fold. But in the meantime, recognizing the challenges in Canada and elsewhere in the world, we put one of our ventilators out on the internet, open source, so that anybody who wanted to manufacture it could. And within Canada, there was a company who elected to manufacture this, and actually in Mississauga. And we actually gave them advice on manufacturing engineering. We connected them with some of our global suppliers, and they were able to produce 10,000 ventilators in 2020 to help with the shortfall that was felt at that time.
That's a fascinating story. And so when you put it open source on the internet, do you get a royalty for that, or is it free of charge?
It's free of charge.
Well, congratulations and thank you for doing that. But I guess that speaks to, does the government need to do something to ensure that you've got those local manufacturers that can produce product all the time, or at minimum in an emergency. I've had people on my show, and you're probably far more expert at this than I, that think that, this is just an example of we're going to have more of these pandemics or emergencies in the future, and us continuing to say it's every 100 years are wrong. SARS was only 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think that, and we've had discussions with the Public Health Agency of Canada, and I think that there are specific areas that Canada could greatly benefit from having a domestic supplier. A good example was the masks, actually. And I know a company in Brockville, Ontario, has scaled up so that we can manufacture masks in Canada and not be at risk in the future of having no supply. This may be true in with vaccines as well, but in our industry, it would literally have to be somebody that had a world mandate, a world scale plant, and that's more challenging to do, frankly, but it's possible for sure.
What are the challenges that government provides to you that they could alleviate? Is it time to get approval? Is it regulatory burden? Is it lack of tax incentives? Tell me what would you want governments to change to make your business more effective in bringing us life-saving products to market?
Well, in actual fact, Health Canada has done a really super job with the pandemic, because they created these interim authorizations that allowed both domestic and global manufacturers to get expedited approvals in Canada for things that were critical to managing the pandemic. So that's worked very well. And I don't really see that regulation has been a problem, nor taxation, really. It's really more about the preparedness of the supply chain. And because, in the average year, that the new sales of, I'll take ventilators, for example, is a very small number. And suddenly, we needed a decade's worth of ventilators right away. And the federal stockpile really wasn't equal to the requirements. And you heard a lot about the US stockpile as well. A lot of it was actually obsolete. And so I think that's one thing to consider is management of an appropriate and well-serviced stockpile to be always ready.
Well, I was told that after SARS, there was a judicial review in Ontario of what went wrong and recommendations for the future. And one was to have such a stockpile in Ontario. And we started having the stockpile, but then for whatever reason, we didn't maintain it, and it became obsolete because they weren't well maintained.
Yeah, I honestly don't know much about the stockpile, although I do know that the federal government, for one, is looking at this for the future, for sure.
Neil, we've heard lots about Moore's Law in IT, and you've just described a pacemaker going from the size of a cell phone over time to the size of a vitamin pill. Does Moore's Law apply in medical devices?
Well, certainly we've benefited from the same miniaturization of printed circuits. That's a key component in allowing us to make things smaller, quicker. In terms of Moore's Law, certainly also things have become more cost effective with time. It's very, very challenging to meet the budget constraints of healthcare, and we take that very seriously.
Neil, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This story of the pacemaker, the size of a vitamin pill implanted in an incision in the leg, and then somehow being transported up to the heart, sounds fascinating. Let me ask you one last question. You probably are exposed to lots of things, both that Medtronic is developing as well as other companies. Give me a sense of one that you're really excited about. What's a medical device that's coming in a few years or whatever that you're really excited
Yeah.
about?
Well, I think, it's not totally new, but the whole aspect of robot assisted surgery, I think that's going to be a key trend, over the next 10 years. And, there's really a race that's on between manufacturers to develop cost-effective and also, outcome effective robots that can help surgeons to get, work in very small spaces and to deliver a superior surgical outcome. So I think things in surgery are going to dramatically change in the next 10 years because of this trend.
Neil Fraser, President and CEO of Medtronic, a medical device company located here in Peel Region, developed and approved and selling a new pacemaker that is the size of a vitamin pill. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, sir, and telling us about it.
My pleasure. Thank you.